Hello and welcome back to the Lakers Takes podcast. This is episode 8. I am your host Edwin Garcia, and today I'm going to be recapping this week's past games, talk about the Lakers' current road trip, and have a deeper discussion on defensive details. Let's get into it. So this was a rough week for the Lakers. They lost a lot of basketball games, and we start the week off against the Bulls. It was a narrative-based game, a lot of stories, right? Alex Caruso's back, Lonzo Ball is back, DeMar DeRozan, who was heavily rumored to be connected with the Lakers, is playing against the Lakers in this game, for the Bulls, obviously. And then you had Zach LaVine, LA native, someone Lakers Nation has clamored for years. They're all here. And then you have the Lakers playing a game they want to win at home after a back-to-back where they just won the first game of the back-to-back. They want to go ahead and get the sweep. And man, oh man, it was rough. The Lakers lost 121-103. Honestly, it was over from the jump. The Bulls were just at another class, another level. They were winning in convincing fashion. They won every single quarter except the fourth, where the Lakers outscored the Bulls 30-27. But by then it was over. 121-103. That tells you how dominant they were. And DeRozan just went off. 38 points, 15 for 23 shooting. Lonzo Ball was just a bucket. 7 for 10 from 3. Caruso didn't do much, but, he was fine. And the Lakers just had a poor game. On paper, you had a good performance from Russ. 25 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. And AD, 20.6 rebounds. But it wasn't, as impactful as you would have wanted. It wasn't during the moments that were needed. It wasn't when runs were happening. They weren't doing anything to kind of protect the perimeter. And again, still no LeBron, still dealing with the abdominal strain. It was just a game that you could just tell one team was just so much better than the other team, at least on this night, or at least in these moments early on in the season. After that game, there's more rumors that LeBron was coming back. He was very close, but then, of course, it was reported that he was not going to play against the Milwaukee Bucks, and he did not play against the Milwaukee Bucks. And then what, you can expect from a championship team like the Bucks, they came out and they balled out. This was a good win for them. They've been struggling. They beat the Lakers 109-102, and overall they've been struggling this season. I think they're kind of feeling the tax of all the games they've played in the last couple years, and another short turnaround season for them as well. I think that's all kind of factored into their subpar record so far. I think the Bucks are going to be fine, but right now they're not playing great. But they had a great game here. They got Middleton back, and he was productive, 16 points, and of course the man of the game, the man of the match, whatever you want to call it, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He was absolutely dominant. 47 points, 9 rebounds. He took the challenge on with AD, and he won that challenge. He was so dominant. He was so good. He was Giannis, just a player who only a few players can be discussed in the same breath as him currently in the NBA, and none of them were on the court in that matchup, Lakers Bucks. AD had an okay game, 18 points, kind of pedestrian. Russ played okay, 19 points, 15 assists, and the Lakers got close in the fourth quarter. They made a run, and they got it within, I believe, 1 or 3 points near the end of the fourth, and then THT got called on a foul and a three-point shot that really, negatively impacted him and the team, as it was another foul where you were trying to be careful, and that was unfortunate. And then, of course, the Bucks hit their free throws, kind of extend the lead, kind of secure the victory after that. There's only about a minute and I think 20 seconds left after that. So another Lakers loss, and at this point, you're just waiting for LeBron to come back. You're hoping for LeBron to come back. And they're already starting this road trip, and you're just hoping that he can return so the team can start to get back some success and start to finally get healthy. And then we got the great news as he was a game time decision, and then LeBron was upgraded to actually being cleared to play, actually playing, actually starting. LeBron James is back in the Lakers versus Celtics game, which to every Lakers and Celtics fan is an important game, is a game you want to win. And there he was playing, and the Lakers still got killed. 130-108, it wasn't a funny matter at all. It was a frustrating loss. But, it was another one where the Lakers just aren't ready for a team playing as well as the Celtics played on this game. This game, Jason Tatum showed why he's one of the best players in the league and has the potential to be one of the top players in the league. He had 37 points, 11 rebounds. He was so good. 7 for 7 from the free throw line, 4 for 9 from the 3-point line, 13-26 overall. He was dominant. You got a good game from Marcus Smart with 22 points. The Dennis Schroeder revenge game, 21 points. He was very, very good, very, very productive in his time, which, I'm not surprised. Again, it's a narrative thing, but Dennis playing against his former team that didn't give him the bag he wanted, and then he ended up in a situation where he's in Boston for, I believe, $5 million, and of course he came out aggressive and he did his thing, and the Lakers just couldn't really put it together. Overall, the first half was okay, but they had another poor third quarter. That's been a trend. They've been one of the worst teams in the third quarter, and this was no exception. 33-21. It was rough, and this was definitely a game that the Lakers wanted. They've been on a losing streak here, and now that LeBron's back, you did want him to just come in and magically fix everything. That did not happen. Lakers still had their problems, and again, they had their moments, but ultimately it was just too much, and the Boston Celtics won a game that matters more to the Lakers nation than maybe the Lakers players, but that's how things were, that's how things are, and that game really hurt them. It dropped them to 8-9 and dropped them to below 500, which they haven't been since the third game of the season when they were 1-2. So these losses have just been building and really, hurting the team, not just in their record, but morale, the conversations, and the way they've been losing has been disappointing. They haven't been games where they've been super competitive and just can't close it out. It's been convincing losses where you definitely feel like they were outclassed in almost every scenario in most of these games. Probably the only bright spot is THT, who prior to the Celtics game, the first two games when he returned against the Bucks and against the Bulls, he was very productive. He had 25 points, he had 28 points. He was playing very, very good. He was one of the bright spots, and he started feeling a little hopeful. And you were hoping that you just enter LeBron into this lineup and things will start clicking. The wins will start coming. Now LeBron's back, THT's back. They'll start winning. And that didn't happen against the Celtics. Now it was just one game and it was the first game back. But, that was kind of the hope. And to see LeBron come back and it not solve everything, that definitely was a concern for Lakers Nation. But again, just one game. Now they're 8-9 and they're trying to get back to 500 and start getting on a roll here, because the Lakers haven't looked good since early in the season, about 5-6 games in the season. That's the last time they kind of looked positive. So that's where things have been. And then, of course, on Sunday, the last game we're going to talk about at this moment is Pistons versus Lakers. Lakers won 121-116 in an absolutely ridiculous game. I cannot stress enough how ridiculous this game was. First of all, the Lakers, started pretty rough. They were up 30-26 at the end of the first, but no one watching that game really felt good. The team felt like they were playing poor. They were giving up really good threes, open threes. They weren't closing out. The long rebounds were again going to the Pistons, and it looked like a very bad game. It looked like this shouldn't be happening with the talent on one side versus the talent on the other. It wasn't matching the scoreboard, and that was a concern. It was a very ugly game. And then the second quarter, Grant just went off. He hit like 4 threes in a row to close out the second quarter. They outscored the Lakers 42-31, and they had a commanding lead, and it looked like this game was over and the Lakers were just totally lost. And this was when, especially on Twitter, which is a place that gets very emotional, constantly back and forth every, couple seconds, the temperature was blazing hot on Vogel, on the team, on the organization, on the roster. It just looked like, I can't believe we're still getting blown out, even with the addition of LeBron James. Like, this is terrible. And that's kind of the feeling that was happening during the first half. And then in the second half, it got even worse when I'm going to try to detail this event, but it's a little tricky. There was a free throw that was shot. LeBron James and Stewart got into a bit of an entanglement there. Stewart slightly pushes LeBron. A whistle gets called. LeBron swings his hand back. I thought it was more of a shoe off, get off me move, but it did connect with Stewart's face. He falls down. LeBron comes over to say, hey, my bad. Stewart gets up, and at first it seems like it's fine, like he's just a little dazed, and then he just gets very upset. I don't know if it was, he did start bleeding. I don't know if it's him realizing he was bleeding. I don't know if someone said something to him that just triggered him, but next thing you know, he's running around the court trying to get to the Lakers side, And it was definitely not a good moment for him, the organization, or even, the league. Luckily, it didn't really escalate, but it looked like it could. He was getting held by 2, 3, 4 players and running this way, trying to get to him, running this way, trying to get to him, pretending he was calm, and then running again, and then being asked to go to leave, and then running around to the other side of the court, and it just looked like things could escalate. Luckily, they did not get any crazier than that. You could hear the announcer saying, "Stay in your seats, remain calm," and there's a police presence that got a little bit ramped up, and everyone just, I'm sure, had flashbacks of Malice of the Palace, and nobody wants a situation like that. No one needs to be fighting here. Put the fouls you need to put out, put the suspensions or fines or whatever, but don't need to get to this point. So luckily, it did not escalate any further than that. After the play was reviewed, LeBron was also ejected, Stewart was also ejected, and Russ got a technical foul. And for me at this point, I thought, well, this game is over. Lakers are going to lose. This is over. Their best player, who also had a terrible game, he was not playing well. He was not performing well. He seemed disinterested in playing defense to any capacity. Even so, you still don't want to lose your best player. And to lose him like this in this ejection, already being blown out, it seemed like this game was over and done. I don't even know how much time it was. It had to be at least 15 minutes between the fouls happening and return of play. It might have been more. But by the time things came back, the Pistons kept doing what they were doing. They still outscored the Lakers 31-23 in that third quarter, and the lead got as big as 19 points. And it felt like there was nothing really the Lakers were going to do to try and stop this game from being anything more than another embarrassing loss. And heading into the fourth quarter, the score was 84-99, which was actually a positive. The Lakers did cut it down from that 19 points to 15, which isn't much, but 15, you still need a couple runs to probably get in the game. And somehow, some way, the Lakers did that. They went on a run. They went on a 7-0 run, cut the lead from 84-99 to 91-90, and then they just kept attacking, kept chipping away. It was 98-101, 98-102, 104-100. You can see where this is going. They just slowly kept chipping away. Shout out to Carmelo Anthony. He got hot on the road. He was 5 from 8 from 3. He was incredible. Russ really got aggressive. He started attacking the basket, started getting some calls, started hitting some mid-range jumpers. Anthony Davis was aggressive on both sides of the basketball. He was playing well offensively. Late in this quarter, he had a double block on Cade, which was really impressive. He had a block on Grant as well. He picked up a couple key steals late in the game to secure the victory, and the Lakers were able to win the game somehow. After just all the embarrassment and all the hoopla, they found a way to win 121-116. Incredible win. Obviously, you don't want to have to do all this to beat a team like Detroit Pistons, who are 4-12 and definitely, just looking at the lottery at this point already. But hey, you'll take a win however you get it. I would say it. Win now, figure the rest out later, and you're still gonna have to figure it out. So might as well get the win and have a smaller problem being 9-9 versus 8-10. You'll take that, especially in the West, where it's extremely competitive, and so few games right now separate top teams from bottom teams. So Lakers found a way to win. Won ugly, but winning ugly is still winning. You take it, and after this week, after all of these games, the Lakers are 9-9. So you can look at that half games won, half games lost. I'm going to say half games won. I'm going to try to be positive. And let's see what happens as this develops here. Now you have LeBron. Now you have the team getting healthy. You're still missing Nunn and Ariza and Reeves, but it's starting to look like maybe you have a chance here. We'll have to see if LeBron gets suspended for the foul that he committed on Stewart. We'll have to see what kind of fines and how those things develop. That might affect the team, but so far, 9-9. You're just trying to survive as you get healthier and try to improve and optimize your lineups. Okay, so before we get into the upcoming games happening this week, I want to talk a little bit about defensive details. I feel like when we talk about the game of basketball, it's so often reduced to just wins, losses, points, rebounds, assists, and maybe blocks and steals on the defensive end. That has started to change with some of the advanced metrics. I have some rants on the usefulness and lack of good use of those metrics. I think it can sometimes be used to just kind of spew a narrative basically, and also sometimes it can be very helpful. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but generally that's how we talk. So today I want to talk a little bit about defensive details, about the nuances in defense that I kind of appreciate, that I think go underappreciated because it's harder to see them on a stat sheet and it's harder to kind of quantify them. So I want to talk a little bit about this. I go in depth on this on my website, lakers-takes.com. The article is actually going to be published on Tuesday, so you're kind of getting a verbal teaser of some written word here. But that's coming out this week on Tuesday morning. I'm really excited about it. I think it came out really well. I'll also do a YouTube video, so that's gonna also come out really well. But I wanted to give you guys a preview here on the podcast and talk about it. So here's some things about the defensive details I want to get into. I used the first quarter of the Lakers-Spurs game a couple weeks back as an example because I noticed a lot of those defensive details in that game. So in that game in the first quarter with about 5:27 left, so if you want to go the extra mile, go find the game on League Pass and then go to the 5:27 mark, press play. You'll see this play here. It was a possession where AD was guarding Johnson, and when AD was guarding Keldon Johnson, he did a great job of staying in front of him, of forcing him to go. He wanted to go right. He went a little bit, but then when there was no room, he went left, and then he picked up his dribble. AD stayed in front of him and kind of caused him to get a little bit, I won't say shooken, but just like hesitant. Didn't want to shoot over AD. AD was kind of all up in him. He put his chest up in front of him, but was able to stay his ground and defend him without using his hands very much. And that forced Johnson to decide to try to force a tough pass in to the paint with THT guarding, and THT got the turnover on the pass that was attempted, and aimed for Thaddeus Young. And I thought this was a great play where, AD should get probably the most credit for the turnover because his presence and his spatial awareness and his ability to kind of attack a player and force them into a tough position when they pick up their dribble, that was the detail that led to the turnover. Turnovers do end up on the stat sheet, so that's good, but what doesn't end up on the stat sheet is that AD kind of caused all that, and that kind of defense is what created that kind of impact. And I found that to be really interesting in this play where I'm like, wow, this is exactly what makes AD great. It doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, but does show up when you watch the game. Another example, this one was about communicating, closing out, and kind of attention to detail, which the Lakers kind of lacked in the Pistons game. So I feel like this is a good clip here. At the 120 mark in the first quarter against the Spurs, the Lakers had an open shooter in Brian Forbes from the Spurs. He had an open three at the top of the key, and what happened was the Lakers communicated and fought. Rondo fought off a screen to get there. By the time that Forbes collected his feet and was ready to shoot, Rondo was able to jump up and contest the shot, or at least he would have contested the shot. He closed the gap so much that Forbes actually decided to pump fake instead of going for it, and then had to reset his feet. Now the funny thing is, when he went for the pump fake, Rondo went flying because he jumped. He fully committed to contesting the shot. So then he went flying off the screen, flying off the court basically. It was nearly by the halfway point by the time he landed and gathered his feet. Forbes actually did a double dribble. His feet were both airborne, and then he kind of landed down, but the ref kind of missed it. And if you watch the clip again, the 119 mark, Russ goes crazy telling the ref, like, hey, he just literally jumped. Like, what was that? But it was barely a jump. That's why I think the ref missed it. Forbes has to do that. That buys a little bit more time. He gathers his feet, and now Wayne Ellington is able to help off his defender and contest the shot again. Since Rondo can't do it again because he just jumped out the screen, jumped out the building, right? So then Wayne recovers, and Wayne decides to close out the gap. And Forbes still got a really good look, but Wayne forced him to speed up just a split second. And then, he misses the shot, and the Lakers, actually Rondo comes back. He runs back from basically being at half court, runs back to recover and get the rebound, and the Lakers get the rebound. So on that play, it's just a missed shot and a rebound, but what it really was the team being focused, the team communicating. Ellington was pointing at the defender and kind of lightly pushed Rondo towards him, and then he contested, then Ellington contested, forced a miss, and Rondo got the rebound. And that's the kind of teamwork, that's the kind of communication, that's the kind of hustle and effort you want the team to give to play incredible defense. They both could have easily said, oh, he's wide open, let's just try to get the rebound, and we'll let him set his feet and shoot the shot the way he wants to. But they tried to interrupt, they challenged him, and he had to do this little pump fake double dribble shot, rush shot again. And that helped cause that missed shot. And that's what you want from the team. Giving that kind of effort and giving that kind of focus and attention to detail on the defensive side of the ball. It doesn't always show up on the stat sheet besides the missed shot and a rebound, but that missed shot was because of the defense they were playing. And finally, another one I want to talk about, again, same game, was Anthony Davis and the presence that he has and how that presence affects the game. This was during the 41.1 second mark in the first quarter. Again, Lakers Spurs, and Lonnie Walker IV had the ball in the corner. It looked like he was going to get a really good shot, but then Rondo was there. Again, great job closing out on the shooter. Lonnie Walker decides to do a quick pump fake and then starts to drive the ball towards the basket, but he really only takes one dribble and then sets his feet and shoots a long range two. But why did he do that? Because Anthony Davis was waiting at the basket. If he wanted to, he could have took it right to the rim and got a shot within 2 feet of the rim. But he didn't want to do that because, quickly made the decision, hey, I don't want to actually have a contested shot over AD. That probably won't work out well. So instead of getting a good-looking three, he had to settle for a long-range two. That did not work. He missed the shot. Lakers got the ball. And that was all just AD's presence. So many times, AD's presence alone affects the trajectory of a shot, turns a shot into a pass, turns the shot into a fadeaway instead of a close range shot or an in-rhythm shot because they're so worried about what he can do and how much he can impact a shot by blocking it or just making you go one way over the other and things of that nature. And I think that says something about AD's defense he doesn't get credit for. I think he is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate kind of every year. And this year he's been incredible. We just talked about the Cade Cunningham blocks he had. He had some blocks on Grant in the Pistons game. And here against the Spurs, he was all over the place defensively. And I think it's just something I want to kind of share and something I want, NBA in general to kind of pay attention to. These defensive details are delicious and help you understand the game better. So hopefully this little conversation, this little segue here, this little segment, helps bring that to your attention. Next time you watch a game, check out the times that you think things don't happen because of defense and how defense affected what the offensive decisions are. It's always all about counters and, you do this, I do that. And I think a lot of times we kind of forget about that with defense. We just look at offense. Did you make the basket? Did you miss it? Did you get a turnover? And not in what the defense did to impact that and what the players around are doing to impact that. All right, the season is not as hectic and as stressful and jam-packed as last season was, but it's not that far away. Again, we have an 82-game season. It's a full season, and the Lakers are playing every other day for a while here. And this week, another busy week. 4 games happening this week, and we're going to go through them really quick here. First, we have the Knicks against the Lakers. Lakers against the Knicks because they're going to be in New York. So Lakers are still on this road trip here, this East Coast road trip, and they'll be in the Mecca, in New York, in Madison Square Garden on Tuesday at 4:30 PT. So that's when they'll be there, West Coast time. So adjust yourself. That might be a time that's earlier than you're used to. All these West Coast games, East Coast games seem to be a bit earlier for us. So something to keep in mind with your schedule and how easy it is for you to watch this game. But Lakers Knicks at 4:30, that should be an interesting one. Again, the Knicks are still a really good team. They're a competitive team. The Lakers on the road, they've been struggling. We don't know if LeBron will play. Maybe he'll get suspended. At the time of this podcast recording, we don't have that information on what the punishments will be for these players, so we'll see what happens. But that's going to be a good game, a difficult game, and a game the Lakers will have to, play much better than they played these last week, really, or else they may very well get blown out. Next game we have is immediately the next day, so it's a back-to-back. On Wednesday, they have to be in Indiana playing against the Pacers. Again, that game's probably going to be hard because of the fact that it's off of back-to-back, and they've been playing so many games here, so we'll see who rests, if anyone rests, what the lineups look like. That's probably what makes me the most nervous, not the actual quality of the team, but off of back-to-back, going to be tough being in Indiana, so we'll see what happens with the Lakers. That game's at 4 o'clock, so it's even earlier than the 4:30 start time for the Knicks game, so again, we're going to have to adjust for these couple games. After the Pacers game, that ends the 5-game road trip, which they are right now 1-2 in. So we'll see what happens here with these last couple games and see if they can end with a positive record, a 500, above 500 record for this 5-game road trip. We'll have to wait and see. On Friday, they're back home. Lakers versus Kings. The Kings have just fired their coach, Luke Walton, on Sunday. So we'll see how that team's reacting, how that team is playing now that they're under new coaching staff, or at least new head coach at the very least. So we'll see. The Kings are always the Kings, but, maybe they rally. Maybe they're a little bit better, rallying together, trying to win for their new coach. I'm not sure, but typically this game shouldn't be too much of a challenge, but there are some X factor things happening with the Sacramento Kings. It's been interesting. And finally on Sunday, repeating this Sunday, the Lakers are back against Detroit, but now in LA at home. We'll see if Stewart's playing. We'll see if LeBron is playing. It's a 6:30 start time, so again, they're back in the West Coast, so they'll be playing their games at the kind of times that you would expect the Lakers to, and it should be interesting seeing if the Lakers can get these wins. I think they can run the table here. It's going to be tough, but it would be really great if they could, because then they can end the month of November on a positive note and start to head to the right direction going into December. It's been a really rough season so far. They're 9-9, so we're going to have to see if they can get these wins here. That would be extremely helpful in putting them in the right direction and starting to get some wins, because you already see some teams separating. We're starting to get to the point where I actually start to look at the standings. I usually don't really care about the standings until the end of the first quarter, and after the Detroit game, that will put them over the quarter mark. It's 21.5, so Detroit's the 22nd game, I believe. So it depends how you look at it. The Kings game, the Pistons game, which one's your kind of your quarter point, but there it'll be. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I would really like them to run the table here. It's going to be difficult, but I do believe they have the talent to do it, and it is time to start getting better, start improving. There's only one team on this schedule that's theoretically a playoff team. That's the Knicks. Pacers, Kings, Pistons. You can win those games. So let's see what happens. Let's see if the Lakers can get those wins. And I'm looking forward to talking to all of you about that next week.